Welcome to the Local Chicagoland Podcast. Here we invite people from our local communities to share their stories and their voices. Through amplifying their message, we share their genuine human experiences that connect us all. Our goal is to make our communities more than just a place to live, but instead, a place to thrive. Tune in to hear what makes our communities so special right here on the Local Chicagoland Podcast.
The Local Chicagoland Podcast is made possible with the generous support of our community partners. Thank you.
Hey, what's going on, friends? Welcome back to another episode of the Local Chicagoland Podcast. I am super excited to be sitting here today with Aunt Tina's Kitchen. You're going to get to know Tony and Abby from Aunt Tina's Kitchen, my friends, who are doing some pretty amazing things around Southern comfort food and how they're bringing the community together, my friends. I think you're going to enjoy this story, and their road to where they're at now has come through good food, faith, grace, and the want to be able to help build an inclusive environment within their restaurant and within their community. So enough of me talking. Let me introduce you to both Abby and Tony. I'll start with you, Abby. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. So I'm Abbey Cannon. I was born and raised in the northwest suburbs of Chicago and ended up moving to Tennessee, meeting Tony back 25 years ago.
Beautiful. And now you're back home. I
am. Yes.
All right. Beautiful. And how about you, Tony?
I am Tony Cannon, the visionary of our little business. And I'm originally from Nashville, and I am the nephew of Aunt Tina. And I just am grateful and thankful for being here.
Yeah, super excited. Yeah, super excited to be here. Tony, you're the man behind the scenes and a lot of this stuff, but I got to meet Abby probably 2 years ago now, sitting here at the Bellworks, just kind of talking, getting to know each other. And I've always been infatuated with stories, and I was infatuated with your story that day, and with a hope of we'll be able to have this conversation one day. And now we're here having this conversation, and it brings me great joy to be able to help you guys amplify your voice, because you're doing some pretty good things, and you're doing it around food, but you're really doing, I'll come back, you're doing things from your heart as well. So I think that's super important as we continue to go forward. Can we start with just giving people a backstory of who is Aunt Tina's Kitchen and how did you guys begin?
Well, I'll let you know this. I'm the visionary of the company, and Aunt Tina, it's my mom's younger sister.
Awesome. She
gave me my first job when I was 14 in the restaurant business, just frying chips for a restaurant in Nashville. And
is that where you grew up too?
That's where I grew up.
Awesome.
I went to basic training while I was still in high school, and I came back from basic training, and that restaurant was closed down. Oh, wow. So everybody from there went to a different restaurant, and I asked my Aunt Tina, "Where's everybody?" She says, "We're here. You got a job. Come up here," and that was Santa Fe. And I worked my way there from salad to fry to grill, and then ultimately meat cutter. And that's kind of where Aunt Tina's Kitchen kind of started, from the ground of being in the meat cooler, cutting meat for like 10 years by myself and dreaming of one day opening a restaurant. And along the way, so many people told me, that's not what you want to do. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do, because I've worked in this industry for a while. Mm-hmm. I worked with Aunt Tina for about 18 years off and on, mostly on, and just wanting to have my own restaurant and having other people, even my wife, in the early years, tell me that we have real jobs. You can just work for somebody. You don't want to own your own business.
Throw that aside.
You don't want to be a business owner. Well, we end up opening our first business, Can Do Painting. Back when Abby got sick, we were still in Nashville, and she had a congenital heart defect, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. I'm sure she may bring that up again. But that caused us to start our own business, because I had to take care of her and take her back and forth to the hospital and get the kids, ready for school and all that kind of stuff while she was sick. So the best thing I could think of was to start my own business, and not knowing how to paint. I learned how to do it a little bit, And then I started hiring people that knew how to do things better than I did. So a few years later, we had a successful business, but we soon found out that she was going to need a heart transplant. So we came here from Vanderbilt for a second opinion at Northwestern and moved in with her parents and her sisters and 2 dogs and our 2 kids. But
it's a busy house.
Yeah.
Yes,
But
to say the least.
It takes a village, especially when you're going through times like that, to be able to have a family you could look to. I think we're more than just the word gratitude solves it. It's what makes life tolerable when you can support your family like that, or vice versa.
Right.
Abby didn't want us to restart the painting business here, so I got a full-time job because we also needed insurance, and that's kind of where I got into the first company, the seasoning company, That Rub, was at Sherwin-Williams, where I was working with the insurance and all that. And we started that company while I was working at Sherwin-Williams, but soon found out because of COVID that we couldn't do samples and things like that, but we could have a food truck. So we decided 2 years after we opened the seasoning company to open a food truck, and that soon blew up because, well, first of all, we have a good product, but the community was very supportive. And working in commissary kitchens, which you have to have in the food truck business, it wasn't enough for us to actually grow. It was very uncomfortable having to share space. So
I see that. Especially with the type of food you guys make. To be able to share the space, the ovens, and to be able to time all that must have been difficult.
So we opened Aunt Tina's Kitchen 2 years after Aunt Tina's Sound Bites.
Cool. So it's about a year ago now, right? I think that you guys are open?
6 months.
6 months
ago.
July
I'm always looking ahead, so 6 months.
So that's the birth of Aunt Tina's without all the extra details.
Yeah, well, we'll dive into some of the extra details as we evolve, but it sounds like you have you're a hard worker. You learned the ins and outs of restaurants by working with your Aunt Tina, and you've worked your way up into different positions. But when you got into the meat and being able to season the meat, cut the meats, all that, a true passion kind of came into play of what I'm hearing. It kind of came into light. So I think that's beautiful. I think when we find our passions and we dive into them, especially the restaurant industry, like it's probably the toughest job out there now. I worked in restaurants for a while. I was with the Cheesecake Factory, and I worked with them for like 10 plus years, and it's a really hard job. So for you to go in it, start it, learn the ropes, and then experience the things you had to, since you had to do a little bit of an audible and on your entrepreneurial journey because you want to support your wife and take care of her, your family the best way you can. But then now God's into the details, and he brings you back through spices during a time where it's kind of just a crappy time in the world to open a business, period, was the beginning of that COVID time frame, and learning a lot. So that's awesome. So the military, I didn't know, though. Which line of branch did you serve in?
I was in the Army Reserve.
You're in the Army Reserve. Okay, awesome.
And I did not complete my training in time, so I got a general discharge.
Okay.
And that was during the time of Desert Shield. And then the 90s. As I came back from basic training, I did my 12th grade year, and I was just going to go to my AIT training the next summer, but Desert Shield turned to Desert Storm, and my uncle was there, and he told me, this ain't where you want to be. And he said, if you don't have to come, don't. And shortly after that, they realized I had to go to summer school, so I couldn't do my AIT training, and that gave me a general discharge. And I'm like, okay, here's my out for that. But I continued to work in the restaurant business, and that's kind of where she came into the picture.
Yeah.
And there was no more military for me.
Yeah, no, and I go back to God's in the details. Things work out the way that they're supposed to, so I appreciate you sharing that. So you married a visionary. That's think I could probably match his mindset. Visionaries, creative people that can't really turn it off. They're always building something. They're always creating something, whether it's spices or good meat. You come into the picture as, to me, I hear you as like you're kind of the operations. You're the person that helps get all those dreams taken care of by the steps along the way. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I think I help with execution. Tony has lots of great ideas, but we work together to kind of figure out how to bring them to fruition. I'm more of like the numbers person, the, rules person, which is pretty opposite.
Very logical thinking.
Yeah.
We need them, but
I'm not logical at all. If it pops in my head, we're trying it.
Yeah. There's something in that I think me and you probably could have a drink over one day. It's a long conversation. There's a lot of truth in that. So when did you come in? You had the heart defect. You got a new heart now. Tell us your story coming from, the build of Antina's, but from your perspective. What did you have to go through?
So Tony and I met when I was in college. We've been together 25 years. So we actually met in the restaurant industry.
Where many people do. It's for me and my wife met too.
Yeah. And so I guess if we fast forward to, like he said, we went through my diagnosis at 34 to, us starting the company, the painting company, so that there'd be more flexible opportunity for hours, to finally realizing like, hey, we need to move for me to get the best care to be able to be alive. And so
step one.
Yeah.
Be alive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when we moved, which was in 2016, I was on disability and not working. And so I got my heart transplant February 27th of 2017 at Northwestern. Thank God for my donor and all of those who are donors. But I went back to work about 6 months later. I got just a new job here in Chicago. And fast forward to when COVID hit, I was furloughed. I was in the business travel industry. So there was no business travel as of March of 2020.
Correct.
And that's when Tony kind of nudged me and said, remember this seasoning that I made? You should sell it online because you're unemployed and you need something to do and you like sales. You should try it. And I figured I had nothing to lose. And so that's where it started, was April 2020. I just went on Facebook, took a picture of these bags of seasoning that we were making literally at home at that point. And it took off like out of nowhere. And, I think as bad of a time as COVID was, it was the most perfect time for our business. Everyone was at home. They were being forced to cook, right? There weren't things open to grab food from. Grilling was very popular. It was trending because you could be outdoors and still be cooking. And the last thing was people were really encouraged to support small during that time. Yeah. And so between all of those things, it was like everyone we knew was telling friends, and we just kept selling more and more of our seasonings.
It's beautiful. And even now you look back, 4 or 5 years later, which is kind of crazy.
Right.
Period. And you're in numerous stores with this rub, correct?
Yeah. So we've gone through multiple iterations. It started in a bag with, I think, just our daughter actually hand drew the first logo, which this comes from that. That's her.
That is it.
But, we've been through multiple iterations. Tony created 7 more flavors. We ended up going to a co-packer because we couldn't keep up with the demand. So now we have a local co-packer in Michigan who actually makes the product and packages it for us.
Just follow Tony's recipe.
Exactly. We send them all the recipes. They put it all together, and then we get it shipped in, whenever we need it, that kind of thing.
Jason, I really quick, I want to just throw it out there, like, to back up. Abby does have a background with entrepreneurship because her father has owned several businesses, and she's worked in those businesses since she was like 9.
It's in her blood too.
Yeah, my dad's a serial entrepreneur as well. So I grew up helping him. He owned a Dairy Queen. I worked in that all throughout high school. He had a milk delivery service, all kinds of different things. So so I definitely had that that spirit, and really what he put me into in those companies was sales. I was the one calling and saying, okay, you've got 4 bottles of milk this week, but would you like to add eggnog? It's the holiday season. And I just loved that value of hearing someone say yes. And I think I just got really kind of addicted to that, even in my younger years, that after college, I went right into sales and thrived.
Yeah. It's a cool story. You know, you were built to be an entrepreneur too. You kind of were an intrapreneur a little bit in the beginning, right? You were doing it for somebody else, and it goes back to the details work themselves out. And you know, I would say would probably be a very scary time with your heart transplant and going through those times to coming out to be like, we're gonna sell this thing. And we're going to do it well. And I love it, you know, that rub, but better together. I think we have commonalities. Like our team will hear me say we're stronger together all the time. And I think there's a lot of commonalities with that. See, the rub's off the ground. It's in numerous places. The food truck was a part of your evolution before getting into now what we have is the brick and mortars of Antina's Kitchen. Can you talk to us a little bit about the food truck and who you guys serve with it, but also like what's your vision as you continue to go forward with it?
So I want to back up just a second because it just made me think that my transplant actually is a big piece of what allowed me to see that entrepreneurship could be for me. Because when you're about to lose your life potentially, you kind of, when you're saved, it's almost like, wow, I should just try things. Life's too short. Yeah. Like, if this is something that's like a good product,
let's in my heart. Let's go pun intended there, I guess.
Literally, yeah. So I think that took me out of this little shell of like, this is safe. I get a paycheck to like, what do I have to lose? Let's just try this thing. So that's just a thing I thought of. But as far as Antina's Sound Bites, our food truck, basically what we had decided after a year and a half of selling the seasoning was that people wanted to try our rub, and we also were seeing lots of markets with not enough food trucks, just huge long lines. And so we started daydreaming about like, what if we could be one of those food trucks? But what if we used our seasoning in the menu? And Tony has the restaurant background. He's always wanted to own a restaurant. We found that a food truck was an easier way to get your foot in the door, much more affordable, right? Things like that. And so he started working on a menu. I started researching physical food trailers. And that winter, which was the winter of 21 into 22, we had a truck built from the ground up in Miami, and Tony worked on a menu, and then the two of them came together in April. And I think we just kind of put ourselves out there and said, let's roll with this.
And a lot of people will want to know this, that during the November of 2021, when we first started thinking about the food truck, I asked my Aunt Tina, who I knew was out of work for like 2 months. She decided to quit her corporate job as a manager for a restaurant in Nashville. And I'm like, why don't you come up here and for a little while and help us, put together this food truck? And she just got another job that she was starting that Monday. And December, I can't even remember the date. Just kind of all that was kind of foggy, but she passed away suddenly from cardiac arrest. And that's when we decided, because we were wanting to open the food truck, there's no better name for the food truck than Aunt Tina's
a tribute, because we wouldn't be here without her influence.
Yeah, especially like you wouldn't even know how to use a knife. Probably it wasn't for her back in the day, right?
Yeah. And the Sound Bites actually comes from the fact that my whole family and Abby's family love music. And Abby's degree is actually in commercial vocal performance. And she went to Belmont, and that's what brought her to Tennessee. And my Aunt Tina, one of the best singers I ever heard in my life.
Like Aretha worthy.
Yes.
So good.
Awesome. So good.
Yeah.
And Aunt Tina's Sound Bites.
I love how you guys are connecting the dots to pull it together.
Because that's what brings people together faster than anything. Good music and great food.
That's it. Communities can be built around those two things, right?
Sure.
There's commonalities in each of them. There's differences, but music could bring us together for sure. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And so can food. It's very communal at the end of the day. So sorry to hear about your Aunt Tina. remember hearing that part of the story. It makes sense, and the sound bites piece of it. So you had this food truck, you have the spices rolling, and now we need a spot, a brick and mortar, which was kind of always your vision, right? You always did want that. It was more the journey upward to be able to get there. Tell us how that came into play. I know you were saying something about like the commissary kitchens where you were at weren't great to work at with the food truck, so finding your own spot was important. But share anything about getting to that journey and opening now, 6 months ago, that you want to share.
Well, I think the first thing is that food trucks in Chicago are very seasonal.
Yes.
We thought we'd work through the winter our first season. People don't come outside to eat in the winter. So we lost in that bet, right? And so we quickly the second year decided we're closed 5 months out of the year, right? Mm-hmm. Well, commissary
we go back to Miami.
Right. Yeah. Commissary kitchens don't have leases for 7 months. They have 12-month leases. Yeah. So we were in a position where 5 months out of the year, we didn't have income coming in, but we still had to pay rent, which is a problem, right?
Well, I went back to Sherwin-Williams for supposedly 3 or 4 months. They loved me there, so they were allowing me to come back just for a little bit, in the wintertime. And it ended up being over a year.
Yeah,
I went back, working part-time there, as well as when the food truck reopened, I was working the food truck.
But even at the shared kitchen, like even things in the winter where we were like, how can we bring in income? Let's do catering for holidays, right? Well, we were competing for an oven that other people were using for the same time of year. It just, it didn't work, bottom line. So we quickly realized, I think a brick and mortar is our next step. We definitely had a vision of more of a sit down with a bar, different than what we got. But we found a space that made sense as our next stepping stone, which is where we currently are in Elmhurst, 582 West Lake Street, Aunt Tina's Kitchen.
Beautiful. And somewhere I'll need to go very soon. Getting hungry just talking about it. So one thing during our prep conversation, I really, I've always liked you. I've always had a love for you guys because of the story that you've had. But this part, I'm like, well, I guess I probably could have guessed this because all the other things line up to this. But I was like, man, Tony, the words that came out of your mouth around like why you're coming to the suburbs with your business and about unifying the community with the help of food. Can you talk to us, like, you shared a little bit of the story in our prelim about like, somebody said we could open up in the city, and you're like, I didn't want to open in the city. I wanted to open up, in the suburbs. Can you share with people why that's so important to your vision?
Well, in Nashville, where I was born and raised, just outside of Nashville, where I went to high school, it's very mixed culturally. But what I found is when I moved here to Roselle, not so much. I felt very isolated, very alone, and I didn't feel heard as much as I would like to be. And so I'm like, if I'm going to open a restaurant and do what I need to do, I need to make it where I'm heard, where people like me feel welcome and they feel heard as well. And so I could go to the city and have a food truck or have a restaurant. There's a lot of Southern comfort, soul food places there. That's not where I need to be because my mission would be null and void. Because there's a voice there, when it comes to the food. But the food that I have here in the northwest suburbs, I was missing home a lot. So I decided to do it myself. But why do it without the mission of bringing people together? Because that's what, food did with my family, especially Thanksgiving and Christmas and around the holidays. We would get together and any and everybody was invited. My grandmother worked at Fisk University for 40 years, and there's still people, even after she passed away last year.
In the kitchen.
Yeah, she worked in the kitchen, yeah. She was Mama Spoon. And even now, after her passing, over a year later, there's still people who come to the house. My aunt lives there now, and they still gather for, I would say feast. Yeah. students and friends of students and family, from over the years. And that's what I wanted to bring to the suburbs, is that sense of togetherness where all people, regardless of race or anything, religious background, can come together and commune together, not just live in the same place and never associate with one another.
What we're in 2025 right now. Why is that so important?
I feel like it's important because a lot of people are like me. They feel alone, even with all these people around them. And there's such a disconnect when it comes to, when it comes to mental health and all that. If we come together a little bit more and communicate and know more about each other, I think the mental health crisis will kind of start to settle down a little bit more, because most of that stuff comes from, just from experience, comes from not being heard and feeling lonely. And so if me as a stranger who owns a business can welcome a stranger in, and I mean, just things as simple as a hand wave or saying hello, it can go really far in changing somebody's life for the better and taking away some of the negative thoughts that some of us have about being alone and hurting and things like that.
Yeah, no better way to do that than around food, right?
Yes.
And I think, too, this area is still very segregated. You have communities that often look very alike, act very alike, go to the same worship places. And when you're in that bubble, you don't know anything different. Your focus is just that.
So, and you only know your perspective, right? You could, unless you go out and you're curious and you ask for other people's perspective, doesn't mean you have to agree with everything. The list can go on, but we all have different perspectives and different, parts of our journey. So I look at you guys and I love that. You want to come to the suburbs, you're bringing different cultures together. But you guys are different cultures at the end of the day. You're bringing two life experiences together to one. And now you're building a restaurant as you do it. And I would say you're building a brand as you do it that has, in restaurant is just a part of it around food. Why is that? Like, what have you guys learned along that journey? Being from different cultures, different backgrounds, what have you guys learned that is now like, oh, we need to make sure we do this so that we can help share, hopefully help share this with others so that they can do it in their own way?
Well, early in our relationship, we realized that there were lots of things about each other that we would have never known, experienced, anything without knowing the other person. I mean, regardless of our marriage, just relationship, period. And
like what?
Oh gosh, it can go down to foods eaten can be one thing.
Yeah, Abby didn't know how to cook at all when we got together, but now she's one of the best that I know.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I can't think of some examples of exactly what things would be different, but I think we saw beauty in our differences and we wanted other people to experience that. Yeah. And so naturally, everything we did just kind of was based around this. How can we help other people expand their vision in life, right? By meeting people different than them and getting to know them and build relationship with them. And I found that here in the Northwest suburbs, there wasn't a lot of opportunity to do that, And so we desire for our restaurant to be a place where that can happen, and we're already seeing it. Kind of a natural, neat part that happens is we're in a very pretty white suburb of Elmhurst, but it has surrounding suburbs that are not as white and they're more diverse. And those people tend to come for our food because they know that food. But then we're attracting Elmhurst people as well to come and try our food, right? They've never heard of a collard green or, eaten fried green tomatoes, things like that. And so we've had people actually sit down that didn't know each other and have lunch together. I'm like, this is what we're trying to do. So I think it's those opportunities to kind of bridge that gap and have a safe place for people to just come together and get to know each other.
And also, I'm from I grew up a lot in the inner city of Nashville, the projects for a lot of the time. And I've learned that we speak different languages.
Yes.
We speak English, Abby and I, but I could say something in the beginning of our relationship, and she have no idea what I said. I'm like, what did you say? And she doesn't. We didn't speak the same language, but now she can understand what I'm saying a lot better because her ear is a little bit more in tune to what I've gone through in my life, and the same thing, vice versa. I understand some of the things that she's talking about now. But without that constant communication, we would still be speaking different languages. And I feel like that's what we do especially in the suburbs. We speak differently. Well, I mean, even in the inner city, I mean, we're so segregated, like Abby said. The languages, we could understand each other if we communicate a lot more and do it with the purpose.
Yeah, like to me, I think I come from like curiosity. Where one of the greatest gifts my parents ever gave me was growing up poor in Indiana, and we're like, as a white kid, you were kind of the minority, and then going to Las Vegas and hanging out with all these rich kids in Conan or Fremd, and what you realize is that we're actually not far off at the core of a lot of our things. If we talk to each other, if we seek to understand, we have a lot of the same feelings and a lot of the same things that, some of the same things that we have to work through and some that we don't. But if we hear what that other person went through, we have more, to me, I speak for myself, I have more empathy in that person's story that I didn't understand before, and more empathy is maybe the wrong word, more compassion. Like, oh, that's why. Well, what would I have done in that situation? If I grew up in the project, what have I seen? What have I learned? And if we could just learn as a society that we are different, but our perspectives are important because most of us, not all of us, most of us want what's good in this world for ourselves, for our families, for our parents, and the list, for our neighbors, the list can go on and on.
And we find that in doing so, we have a lot to offer each other, regardless of our background, our socioeconomic position. We have a lot to offer one another if we just listen. A poor man has an idea. Poor man, me, have a lot of ideas. I'm not going to say rich, but someone growing up with a better socioeconomic.
She's rich in love towards you, Tony.
Yes, indeed. And she has a lot to offer me, but we have to communicate in order for her to understand that I have a lot to offer her. And so that's what makes us better together.
Yeah, beautiful. Your stories are bringing people together through food. You are an interracial couple, which in our world is not the most common thing to do, even though it's changing more and more and more. And eventually, it will, I think, will be more of a mixed breed. I think the futurists will tell us that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter about race; it's more about our hearts and how we treat each other. But yeah, what's your experience in general with this? But what advice would you give to other people going through it? I guess. Too.
Yeah, so several things. The first thing I think of is in Nashville, Tony's family was my family because my whole family is all over the country.
That's how you learn how to cook? Is that what I hear you saying?
Definitely. But like for, the 20 years I was there, that became my Nashville family. And I learned so much from them by just gaining perspective, like you said, understanding people better, and even prejudgments, right, that we have in our heads, realizing that's not even true. Why was I told that lie, right? So I think I had a lot of growth during my time in Nashville. And then when we came here, it's kind of the opposite. I mean, if you could talk about opposites attract, we're pretty much the extremes of that. He's from the South, I'm from the North. He's Black, he's a creative, I'm logical. There's just so many differences, but that is, what strengthens us. And And then we've seen that in our community through other organizations, through other friends, by just exposing them to things outside of their norm. So it's a piece of what we try to do just in our daily life, not only our businesses, basically.
Yeah, no, I think that's beautiful. There's strength in our differences is what I just heard you say.
For sure.
And to me, I go back to like, we are stronger together. But if we all think alike, if we're all like, then we're not really together. Like, it's about bringing different ideas to the table, allowing the creatives to create, allow the driven, sales, task-oriented person to kind of come in together with that. And it's that can come in many different ways. But to me, there is strength in our differences. And that's why curiosity is so important, especially in today's day and age where we're being fed whatever is in our algorithm, but may or may not be true. Go in to talk to people that are different than you, or going in to try different food that you've never tried before. It's important.
And Tony actually just created like a series that he's been doing at local libraries based on that exact thing. If you want to kind of share more about it, Tony.
Well, I say that I am more than what you think I am. And that comes from kind of being stuck here. For a lot of people, I've only been here 8 years, but I'm 48 years old. And so I spent 40 years of my life in Tennessee. Those people know me a lot better than the people here. All that they know here of me is basically the 5 years we've been in business, or what they know about Abby and her family. So when it comes to me, they don't know that I write, I sing, I draw. I do a lot of different things. It's just not Southern food for me. My cooking, spans from things like blackened pan-seared salmon, or pan-seared grouper, all kind of different marinated steaks, and a lot of different things that I'm capable of doing. That's my first passion. Southern comfort food is not. I honestly had never cooked collard greens until I opened the restaurant. I ate a lot of collard greens, but that's not where my passion is, and a lot of people don't know that about me. Yeah. So I don't want to get stuck in that category, because that's not where my vision is leading me. And I really would like to let people know that, like I said, I am more than what you think I am. A lot of people don't know that my vision for my company, I don't really have one. My vision for my life is what drives the businesses, which is, and I'll go ahead and let y'all in on it, my vision for my life is this. By the time I'm 65, maybe 68, I would love to be sitting on my back porch in a small, nice little house where I live with my wife, and my kids are gone, moved out, of course, because by that time, if they're not gone, I'm kicking them out. But a nice little small home with some nice land, sitting on my back porch, drinking moonshine, shooting squirrels out of the tree with my .22, and watching my chickens and goats do what they want to do. If you want to come over to the house, you better call first, because I'm probably going to be in my underwear. I'll put on my coveralls when you come around the driveway, but call first.
You got a vision.
That's my vision for my life. And the businesses for us is just a means to get to that point.
I think it takes me to like the faith piece we talked about. You guys said you left a church. You left a church and you decided that instead of church being your missional thing, you made your business your missional purpose. And I'm like, whoa. Yeah, it's kind of what Love Local is. I can speak for myself, is that's kind of very much where it started. It was like, oh, this is like, if we all know each other's story locally, and we could be curious and we could understand that not everybody is who they think that we think they are, and we try to get to really know people, that we could create a better tomorrow, and we can be stronger together if we're open to that type of thinking. But for you guys, the missional business, and I'm seeing it everywhere you guys do. So whether it's this and it says we're better together on it, to this story behind the food truck to now being in your business, so all the way to the library. I see you putting your faith in how you want to do life into your businesses. Can you share more about that journey and why it's important to do that, not just so you could sit there at 65 or 68 in your underwear, because that does sound like fun, Tony, but why is that so important from a missional standpoint?
Well, I think that our businesses are like a vehicle to create change for us. And individually, there's only so much we can do. But with a business, you have a platform, and that platform has influence, and that influence can cause change. So I think for us, that was what made sense, especially after, being a part of a church where our flawed society was influencing the church.
Sure, it's everywhere.
And so that hurt came along with it, and we just decided, we love God, but we can make these changes and love Him without, being in a building. We can do it through our business.
Yeah,
and also being together, we saw that together we want to make change, but as individuals, the change, it was growth. And I saw her changing as an individual, and she allowed me to change as an individual. So in bringing about that change, that growth, it's like it makes it organic when you're building a business. Or that growth, it yearns for change.
Yeah.
And so when we are changing internally and doing it in such a positive way, it's almost automatic for the people around us to change as well.
What have you learned through that? Like, about yourselves, about each other, coming at it from that approach? What have you learned?
Let's see. What have I learned? Being 100% myself is what I really have always wanted. And if I am 100% myself, no matter what I give away to other people, I still don't lose anything. But when I'm not being 100% myself, whatever I give away to other people, it takes away from who I am. And I don't care how you spend it, what platforms you're on. When you think of that, like wholeheartedly, you actually feel it in everything that you do. That if you're not being who you know you're meant to be, you give into other people. You take away from yourself. You can just feel drained.
Yeah.
But when you're 100% yourself, you cannot, no matter what anybody else does, they can't take any of yourself, your energy. It's you keep it all for yourself and still have the power to generate change in other people.
Yeah, and you experience joy while you do it, right?
Yeah.
Even when you're, my buddy say, like, even when we're in the shit, we can experience joy because we're being our authentic selves. Like, and I come at it from a place is like I always wasn't my authentic self. Like,
yeah, I wasn't.
And I look at like I maybe was a late bloomer in that. I'm looking not to show embarrassment for myself, but to show the reality of, I think it's not just me, it's many people. Is like I was 40 years old until I got to like I really felt like I could be my authentic self, because there was always something stopping me before. Instead of me just going at it, I was, whether I was worried about the outside and what people thought, whether it was fiscal responsibilities, whatever it was. And I can't tell you now, from working through that healing and through that process, to being yourself is super important because it's really heavy the other way in life. So if we could come from a place of building things that matter with purpose to help create change from the world that we see it, to help create food, or help create a media company, those are important. Yeah.
And I think we've learned too, just real quick, we've learned that most people want there to be a mission behind a business.
Yes.
They want to know that story and the behind. They want to know who is Aunt Tina. We actually have a big poster on our front register because so many people are asking that, right? People desire to know each other. And so this is it's been cool to kind of see that grow over time through different companies in our growth.
Yeah. No, definitely. What were you going to say?
Well, I jotted down a note, and this is something that is a great place to put it, because when I think about being 100% myself, it comes from this, and it's I believe we're born with or learn very early who we are or want to be. But as soon as others see that we're learning something, they start trying to make us who they think we ought to be. At this stage, what we see as encouragement can actually be discouraging. And as adults, we don't give kids enough credit. Mm-hmm. So we want them to be who we want them to be or expect them to be in life, thinking that we're protecting them from something. But actually, kids are a lot more, they have a lot more elasticity than we give them credit for.
We usually ruin them.
We ruin them. And I felt like, in my case, I was ruined because it made I was shy and quiet. Mm-hmm. Even up until Abby and I got together, she would think,
he was so shy.
Everybody would think like, "What's wrong with you? Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I was just quiet." But I was very discouraged in life because of all of the.
And you weren't confident.
I wasn't confident at all in anything.
We're similar in a lot of ways there.
So that comes from my childhood, and I try to make sure that in my upbringing with my kids that I encourage them to be more than even what they feel like they are, because society kind of gives us direction, and it's not always the best thing for us.
Sure.
We know what we want to be. Like my son wanted to do auto mechanics. I never really knew that until, he was 16. He's 19 now. And as soon as I found out about that, it was all encouragement. What do you do what you want to do. You don't have to go to college. You don't have to get if you want to go into the trades, do that. What can I do to help you get where you want to be? And that's what he always wanted. His favorite movie when he was a kid was Cars. Should have known then. But it just what he wanted to quit sports. I didn't like it, but if that's what you want to do, go for it. But do something. Figure out what you want to do. And as soon as he did, it's all about encouraging who he is to help him become 100% himself. Yeah. What he's always wanted to do and what God put in him to do, not what I want him to do.
It's a hip hop song that says, "We aren't the artist, we're the canvas." It's named Propaganda is the name of the hip hop artist that wrote that song. It's a song called "Dig," and I've heard that probably 3 or 4 years ago when I first heard that song. And how I took it is each of us are given God-given gifts, and whatever those things are. And many times as a kid, we feel and notice those gifts. They're more abundant and more clear. And I can speak for myself. I was an insecure, quiet kid, even in corporate America. Hated speaking in front of people. But I wasn't my authentic self because of whatever we go through in our childhood. My parents did the best they could. I'm sure yours did the same thing, but we go through our own things. But if we could come at it from a place, whether it's our parents or just other people in general, of like, to be you, even if it's not like what's popular or not whatever, like who cares, like right. Be you. And that's important, and because that's where true joy comes from.
Yes.
And when we're not, and I'm speaking for myself, but when we're not being our, maybe you agree, but when we're not our authentic selves, we're putting off this stigma to the outside world. The things we're carrying, others could see. We don't think it, but they can see that, and because it comes off in us in different ways. Where if we could all just get to be, even if it's just a little nugget of being our true self. I know we got to get jobs, we got to do these things. What I could tell you is, if you really went after what you felt you would go after, it might be hard, but you could do it, right? Like, and I think people should, for their own selves, but especially for kids. I love that advice with kids. I think let them dream, let them be that innocent little builder, and give them confidence as they come up, that it doesn't matter if it's not on mainstream media or whatever it is. It's like that brings you happiness, like double down, right? Like, yep. And do more of those things. And it doesn't have to be, I'm going on a tangent now, but it doesn't have to be one dimensional. me as a creative is, and I think you might be the same way. Like, people knock us maybe for doing a few different things, or we could have more than one interest by design. We're designed not to just like one thing. we're designed honestly, to do more than one thing, and some of us have that ability more than others.
I love to do stand-up. I love to sing and do musical things, and I love to write. So as I'm doing building my businesses, those things make me being in my business that much easier. It makes it fun because I have an outlet to do those other things that God gave me talent for.
Yes.
I mean, to be a shy, quiet, young person to now doing stand-up, it kind of helps when I have somebody come in and approach at the counter and they're asking me something about probably something that has nothing to do with food. It happens all the time. I feel like I'm confident enough to approach that situation without feeling like I'm inadequate, Yeah. So those other things in life, I mean, my degree's in elementary education. It helps to teach and manage and all those types of things. So using those things, even though I'm not a teacher, it still helps me in the business that I'm in to feel like I'm a better me.
Yeah.
It makes it easy.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like we're better when we kind of come from that place. Like, it's a place of rest. You're creating, you're building. It's still restful, kind of, right? So through that, you could come off better to the world when you have, when you get to show up as your true self every day. And I pray that people that aren't, like, they go figure that stuff out. And try to live more joyfully, because I can tell you, as a man that goes through shit, you guys have gone through your own shit, you're still experiencing joy because you're being your true authentic selves when it comes through that. We talked in preparing for this just about lessons learned, and you both had kind of each of your own perspectives. And Tony, when we talked about this, you did talk about I am more than what you think I am within here. But I'll kind of go into each of you. As you've looked back on this last 4, 5, 6 years, what lessons have you learned about, for you, Tony, about resilience and staying connected to your why? Why is that important?
It's important. I feel like because more than anything, I kind of owe it to myself, but I also owe it to my wife, because she's allowed me to be who I am, where a lot of people in my life haven't. Yeah. She's allowed me to make mistakes. She's allowed me to be a visionary, and she's allowed me to love the way that I love and not put me in a box. So doing those things, building businesses and raising kids, she's probably the glue that holds it all together, the mortar for me.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. It's having the glue and the mortar as you're building things is important to keep it all together. And so a supportive in your vision, and very much an executor in the role of your guys' vision together, right? And I think that's beautiful. I appreciate you sharing. When we talked about lessons learned for you, Abby, you talked about, like, of course, let us dream, the adapting and reevaluating what works and what doesn't work, and being able to pivot on that. How has that mindset helped you in this journey?
Yeah, so I mean, we've had a lot of bumps in the road in the last 4 years. I think that any entrepreneur does, right? But I think that one of the things Tony and I do well is we take time to reflect, especially at the end of each year. I feel like we do this to kind of be like, okay, what worked, what didn't, and then what do we tweak for next year, right? And sometimes what we do is right on, and other times we're like, oh, that was not probably the best thing that we should have done, right? And you learn from it and you grow. And so I think that each iteration and each business as we've grown has kind of improved, and it's the sky is our limit kind of thing, because we just keep taking a step back and evaluating and then deciding, what can be next for us.
A lot of people say, that I should probably do more, or she should probably do more, or whatever the case. But what we find is that staying in our lane is what makes it groove well for us. Is she allows me to be me, and I allow her to be her. Yeah, we cross a little bit, but for the most part, me staying in my lane and being the visionary and allowing her to be the logical one, and me taking her advice when she gives me something, or her doing the same thing, taking my advice when I give her a little bit, but still at the same time staying in our lane. I think that's the one constant when we do that. Checking out who we are at reevaluation, that's the one constant. I think
it goes back to what God gifted you with, right? Obviously, your authentic self, whatever those gifts are, is who you're meant to be and do. And for me, that is that, logical, sales, all those things. And for him, it's the creative and the visionary. So we do better when we stay in those lanes.
I hope people are listening to this, and either you have this type of relationship or work on this type of relationship, because I think it's important for not only business operators to balance off each other's strengths. And, I look at business, when Cole says certain things, I'm like, yes, because I don't have any clue. Whatever you say, there's a believability amongst it. I look at it in my house, and I had my wife probably 5-6 years ago back take the strength-based leadership stuff, and after she read my strength, she was like, oh, that's why I always have to tell you to take out the trash, because number one strength is futuristic, which pretty much means I live in the future. Not always healthy by any means, but you have some of that in you too, because you think about what could be, right? But once we figured out we got to stay in each other's lanes. Now there's not as much friction. It's more like, Jay, take out the trash, dude. Okay, I'm going, and I don't mind that to me, that operator mindset of going forward, because my brain automatically thinks about creative things and how dots are connecting in ways that may or may not matter at that time. Just how my brain works and what God's given to me. But what you said is allowing each of us to be our authentic selves. You said it too. It's a great way for a marriage, but also for a business, when you're not trying to change the people you work with. It's more like, you're good at this, I'm good at this. Let's just go. And I'm going to trust you. You trust me. We're both going to make mistakes, or all of us are going to make mistakes. That's okay. Let's give each other grace, and let's lift each other back up if we need to. And let's continue to go on this journey, because, that's what we're feeling called to do at this moment in time. The world's a hot mess right now. When I said 2025 earlier, it's almost 2025, end of 2024, but the world's a hot mess. And I think it's important that we love our neighbor and get out into our front yards during this time in history, and not so much in this algorithm that is building us to divide, in my opinion. As we get ready to wrap up, I would love to ask the question from both of you is what's your words of wisdom to the community now? From Abby and Tony, from Aunt Tina's, what do you think the community needs to hear right now with some type of uplifting message?
To me, I think the world would be a better place and with less division if everyone made an effort to get to know people that weren't like them. Yeah. Without even going any deeper, I think that would bring change.
I'll go a little deeper. What do you think they would learn? It's a wide open statement. But,
again, it's that whole perspective thing, right? It's where they come from, why they feel the way they do. Again, you don't have to agree with it to understand someone, right? And I think the more we understand people, the further we get as a group, instead of splitting it down the middle and being divided.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. How are you?
I would say mostly in one word, and I'll explain, but grace. You have to give yourself grace, but give others grace too. Yeah. And that comes from a place where I blamed my parents for a lot of stuff, but I went back and I learned who my dad was. I wanted to know why I was the way that I was, why did I treat my wife or my kids the way that I treated them, and it was because what my dad gave to me or didn't give to me, or my mom didn't give to me. And I had to go back and learn what their childhood was like. And in doing so, I realized my dad never knew who his dad was, so he gave me the best that he could give me. And so in that, I'm giving my kids the best that I could give him. But after I learned to give him grace for who he was and what he did or didn't do for me, I was able to give myself grace. And I think a lot of times we don't do that enough. We don't give grace because we don't know enough about our neighbors to give them grace. We go on what we see on the surface.
We can't give it ourselves, so that God forbid we gave it to somebody else.
Exactly.
That's a heavy life.
In our relationship, Abby and I went through a period where we did have to go to counseling. And one of the biggest things I learned was we have to dig deeper. We were very surface relationship. And so once we started to dig deeper, that taught me to dig deeper with other people and also with myself. And in digging deeper, you're going to get to the core of it. And you can't get to the core of anything with self and nuclear relationships, let alone the rest of the state, the nation, or the world, without digging deeper. And so we just have to dig much deeper.
You know what else I remember from counseling?
What is that, girl?
They told us to go on roller coasters, which sounds really weird.
Changed my life.
But the reason for it, we literally went to an amusement park after like this counseling session or whatever, and the whole purpose behind it was finding joy. Right? Because when you're an adult, you lead a pretty monotonous life of work, kids, home, dinner, sleep. You know, it's the same. And I especially am one to fall into this trap of I like order. I like to know when things are happening. So that monotonous life is easy for me. You and my wife,
Carrie, would get along very well.
It is very easy for me. And, you know, going to that amusement park and riding roller coasters together put us in a place of joy. You know, we weren't thinking about all the other stuff. And so their point was, do things like that more often. You know, go to the comedy shows, go do things that just bring you joy that are outside of your normal routine.
Yeah, that's both just great advice. And, you know, I think of this time in history, and I think of you guys' story, and my hope for people is, like, for when they listen to your advice, I think stories matter. I think that if we literally just sat there and got to hear somebody's story that is different than us, without the intent to judge, the things that we could learn, not only about them, but also maybe about ourselves. Grace is so key, because these things come from some way. And I know for me, I've had to unlearn a lot. And I still have unlearning to do, because it's the nature of the time of history that we're in, that I feel like we all have some learning to do. But in order to truly learn, we might need to unlearn some things. Definitely. With that, unlearning things is not, to me, I don't even know if it's possible unless you're giving yourself grace, because it hurts sometimes, right? And it's hard. But if we don't unlearn, if we don't look to seek out people that are similar but also different than us, and especially different than us, about their story and where they come from, to understand that our commonalities are not that far off and that we want a lot of the same things. I'm nervous for tomorrow. I mean, personally, but I think I also have hope, because I do think we're at least talking about it now. 50 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about this, or we wouldn't be talking about mental health or whatever that would be. It'd be taboo. Sure. But now these are things and stories within our society that we all have a little bit of work to do. And, you know, whether it's putting it into your business and leading with love through visions that you have there, or whether it's just as simple to be like, my neighbor just had a sign that was different than me in my yard during this election. I need to go find out why. And because I see them, they smile at me every day. They've taken out my trash before, but we seem different and we seem divided now. To me, we need to talk to people that are different than us and have differences of opinion, because what I'm learning is, like, we are stronger together, but it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It means we're going to have to put in that work. It might mean that subliminally we might have to go on some roller coaster rides as neighbors to find out what sparked that joy in us again. But we
don't always have to talk about those signs.
No.
Those signs may be the reason why we see we need to talk to each other, but we don't have to jump straight into that.
No.
We can talk about,
very few people are ready for that.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Well, but start with commonality. Start with your food. Start with going to a library to see what you're doing there. Go to Aunt Tina's and sit by yourself and see who comes in that you could spark a conversation with. I'm glad you said that because you're 100% right. But it's also, we can't pretend that it's not there either.
Right.
Yeah, and because, I'm talking to friends, well, this and this and this have different views than me. But I'm like, well, what if the root was this? And then they're like, oh. You see them second guessing us what they're thinking. They're working. Maybe they're unlearning. Maybe they're learning. Whatever that is. So I'm not saying to lead with that because I don't think we have to. I feel like we start with our commonalities. But if we have questions, I'm going to go to you and be like, here, maybe this is something I'm struggling with or whatever it is, and I'm going to go to somebody that's different than me. And to me, I just think my hope is that we do that more often because our commonalities are not that far off.
Right.
We all most of us like food. Most of us want a good, strong partnership and both business and marriage. Most of us want to do and make sure that we raise our kids to be their authentic selves. There's so many commonalities within us. Lead with those. And then if we have questions in this other stuff, do it. But just to think, it's just because it's always been that way. Well, maybe you should look at what these root causes are within things, because maybe just because it's always been that way doesn't mean that we can't learn and grow from this.
Jason, I want to give you a something to do. And if you do this with your family, you'll probably find that this is something that everybody should probably do. Go to a farmer's market or go to a grocery store, get you some fresh green beans or get you some collard greens, and no TV, no phones, just turn on some music, and I would suggest some music that you typically don't listen to, just something a little bit different, and pick those collard greens together and see what the conversation turns into. Because there's something about sitting around picking collard greens. My family, my culture for years, I can remember just in my time period, seeing the ladies gather in the kitchen and sitting around picking collard greens, and the conversations that I would hear as a young kid were amazing. You hear all the gossip, you hear everything comes out in the wash while you're cleaning collard greens. Or turnip greens, whatever. But try it. Yeah. Just try it and see what happens. You if you need to know how to do it, I can teach you how to do it. It's really easy.
So I'm looking at my dad. My dad grew up in the South. So I grew up on collard greens. I grew up pecan pie, sweet potato pie, pork chops, black eyed peas. Those are the things that stick to me. Yeah. I have not picked collard greens. I've seen them picked, but I've never done it. But I think that's a great advice, and it's you're belonging with somebody. You're in community with somebody as you're doing that, and that definitely should be within your family and other people. So I appreciate that. And do you want to try the collard greens once we make them to see if they're good or not, or you're not going to judge me that much?
I won't judge you.
Sure.
I don't judge nobody.
You should have a little more
the effort that goes along to it. If you can't finish a race if you don't start a race.
Yeah.
So you pick
start
collard greens
small,
for the first time, and then it don't taste good.
Yeah.
Believe me,
don't stop.
He's gone through some not taste good batches.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. And a lot of people say you never make food that don't taste good. Yes, I do. You just never taste it.
He said because it's in the trash.
That's how we feel about video. You're great at video. No, you just don't see the million takes we take.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Ha. But I've enjoyed this conversation. I look forward to more to come as we continue to evolve. I go back to, you never know how things are going to go out, but hearing your story for the first time to now being here to now, getting to know Tony more throughout this process has been awesome for me. And I'm like, God's into the timing on all this stuff. So I appreciate you both.
Thank you.
And looking forward to the future. Tony, I think me and you should be friends and we should hang out more.
For sure.
But as we close, where can people find you, and how can they come visit you and support you?
Yeah. So we're on Instagram and Facebook at Aunt Tina's Kitchen or Aunt Tina's Soundbites, either one. Our actual location is 582 West Lake Street in Elmhurst.
Mm-hmm.
And our website is www.auntinaskitchen.com.
Awesome. Beautiful. Anything else?
I would encourage anybody, if you are thinking about coming to Aunt Tina's Kitchen, or you have any questions about how to cook this or food, my recipes are cultural for the most part. A lot of them are my own personal recipes, but still come from a place of the heart of love. I don't care. My recipes aren't solely mine, other than the seasonings, but the restaurant recipes. If you want to talk about how to make something, come and talk to me. If you have a question about how we do business to start your own small business, come and talk to us. If you have a complaint about anything, come and talk to us, because we're just regular people doing regular stuff.
Yeah, doing the best that you
and
can.
And it's about community, like we said.
Something else important are hours. So we're open Thursday through Sunday, 11 to 8.
Cool. Thursday through Sunday, 11 to 8.
Yep.
Beautiful. Love that you guys take Monday off to rest.
Yep.
So beautiful. Well, it's been an honor. I look forward to getting to know you more. We're going to hang out more. I feel like we have a lot in common, that from the creative side, that me and you probably could have some fun. So I'm looking forward to that. But my friends, for one, good food matters. Community matters. And trying things that you may have tried before, may have not, is important. My friends, I'm really honored to be able to share the story and to be able to pull the story out with both Tony and with Abby of Aunt Tina's Kitchen. My friends, we think we're stronger together as community members, and we think that our stories matter, and that we think that through our stories and through those perspectives, and just as Tony said, through grace, we could have a better tomorrow. But step out of your comfort zone. Maybe get some collard greens. Go check out Aunt Tina's Kitchen. Get some Southern comfort food, and realize that life is short, and community amongst us as neighbors is important. So go check out Aunt Tina's Kitchen. You're not going to be disappointed. I can promise you that from eating it in the past, both their food truck and at their location. I'm going to steal the spice too.
That's yours. I was actually going to tell you that. That's for you.
But I've found through genuine love for their food, but a lot of it comes from the people that they are. So support local, love local, and my friends, we're stronger together. Peace.